some of the hype and some of the problems that we've been seeing with AI. Just so to tamper down expectations here, we noticed a meter study that they took with had 246 tasks. They gave it to a group of developers that had, around 5 years of experience. They tried to use AI. They had a moderate amount of AI experience. They tried to use AI, and remember, this is early 2025, to do these tasks. They all reported that they had a really good time and it felt like they were more productive. When they measured it, it actually looked like they were not. They actually lost productivity. So there's a takeaway from this. Let's step back real quick because I'm kind of curious about this. The takeaway is that I like is that they had a good time. They reported positive productivity. They enjoyed it. They liked it. They were happy, and that needs to go into account. However, of course, from a business perspective, they actually lost productivity. Now, of course, I started PubNub many years ago, and I wanted to make sure that we are doing really good as a company, and I want productivity to be at the top of the list. However, I also want to say happiness is a critical measurement. We need to have happiness in there. Okay, so next slide is going to cover what really happened with that meter study. So this was early 2025. We didn't have really Claude. We didn't have really good AI tools that existed. We didn't also have good prompting practices. And the LLMs themselves weren't all that good at generating code. They were okay. They did a good job. They were fine. They were perfectly fine. However, if we had a good prompting practices, we probably could have gotten better results. I was expecting to see maybe some actual productivity gains there. It's different now. In 2026, now we have Claude, we have Gemini, we have Codex, we have these CLI tools that help us. We've got Cursor, and we have great prompting practices, and we have a whole slew of tools and techniques, which is what we're going to cover today. We're going to cover those things. We're going to talk about what that is. There's also the hype. We can't go into this without talking about the hype. There's this seeming magical capability that AI we've been hearing about. It's like it improves our productivity at 10,000%. It's because it's magic. People who are non-professional engineers are able to now write and release apps. They work. They're fully functioning apps. And I've been, talking with some of these people in the industry and like hearing about how they're starting new businesses on this, and it fully works. There are problems though when it comes to it runs versus, is production grade and ready and stable and it's monitored and all the things that that we need. So today, with all the tools and techniques, I do expect that we should be able to see a productivity boost even for professional engineers, just not at the 10,000% magical works phase. So also kind of like a comparison to cloud servers. Remember when those came out many years ago, decades ago? The market was resistant, and now it's expected and it's standard. I'm seeing the same thing with AI. And so now in 2026, we have some general expectations for software engineering in the profession to see that the AI is writing the code and the AI reads the code too. This is a neat one. I really like this one, AI reading the code and then doing work based on that as well. So we direct the AI and we're sitting there and we don't really have to type anymore. You don't have to type the code out anymore. You could just ask the AI to do the way that you would do it. And that's actually going to be my number one prompting recommendation is have the AI write the code that you would be writing anyway. If it's starting to get fuzzy and it's starting to go like beyond your expectations or beyond the boundaries of what you're thinking, your prompts are too broad. We need to get more direct. Okay. So the topics for 2026 here on this list, we will walk through a few of these. There are a lot of slides on this presentation, and I'll paste it in here into our Zoom chat so you guys have it really quick. Let me open that up so if you're curious about jumping in to take a look. We're not going to go through all the slides. We're only going to go up to slide 17. And then after that, I'm going to walk through a demo. And I'm going to show you what it looks like with all these tools and techniques and capabilities and show you how well it works. I hope it works. I'm trying. It might. I tested a few times and it worked. So we've got our coding agents. And inside those coding agents, you've got sub agents, background agents. You've got MCP, A2A, LSP, agent SDKs. You've got frameworks and tools that do tool calling inside those agents so you can make your own agent. We've got innate in and other workflows, Skills, hooks, plugins, slash commands, so many amazing things. And if we're going to be building AI into our infrastructure, there's retrieval augmented generation, which we all probably been hearing about for a while. You can also do model routing and prompt caching. This is a lot of stuff. It's amazing how much is available in this ecosystem now. It makes you realize that how potent this AI technology is. Real quick, jumping over to MCP, if you're not familiar, or if you very are familiar, it works in a kind of a neat way. It's the same as a server. You kind of think of it as a web server. You've got an HTTP client, and then you've got an HTTP server. It's pretty much exactly the same. The only difference is it uses JSON RPC. And the only difference between that and HTTP is there's just no headers. There's no HTTP headers. It's just the JSON body and then a few expected fields. It's pretty much the same thing. So you've got the LLM, which is the agent, which has an HTTP MCP client. We write an MCP server. That server has the capabilities to reach out into other systems like data systems, databases, make API calls, reply back with extra information that might be cached in the MCP server for additional context. And there's also an LSP. You may be familiar with LSPs because they've been around for a long time. Now the AI agents can take advantage of these. If you don't have an LSP for your project in your language, you're missing out. The AI has to go in, read the files, grep, and look for the different things that it needs to manipulate and change. With an LSP, it gets a full call tree for your entire repository. It's faster, so the AI doesn't have to run these extra commands and then use all this context window up. And it gives it better results. It now knows which functions call where, variable dependencies. It is absolutely beautiful. If you don't have an LSP, you should have one. We're going to walk through adding an LSP at the end of this presentation here. Here we go. This is slide 11. This is the ultimate slide. If you don't want to look at any other slides, slide 11 is your one slide to look at. This includes all the things that I recommend, at least for 2026, that we're all very familiar with. So we've got our coding agent at the top, MCP, of course, LSP. We just walked through that. Doing a Git work tree so you can do parallel feature development. All at the same time, run multiple agents simultaneously, and then you just hop around between each of them. There's a Claude MD, which allows you to persist generic instructions that you would have to repeat every time you start a new task in that repository. Probably familiar with those. I have a recommendation for Claude MD directly. Keep it short and simple and clean because it does eat up context and it can start getting fuzzy. Using hooks, a hook is going to be deterministic. Every time Claude does a certain action, you can execute additional code. So like say when Claude finishes writing a file, or Codex or Gemini, they finish writing a file, you can have it run cargo format or any other linter, for example. A sub-agent allows you to define what that agent is going to be, and it usually is embedded in your code generator, right? Your agent, your code agent generator. You can define a sub-agent, and it will run off with the sub all on its own context window. You get all this power with the sub-agent as much as the primary agent. And this is critical because, check it out. When you're using a coding agent, they've trained the context window at the very beginning to be most accurate and beneficial. After your context window starts getting larger and larger, the agent does start to slow down and get less accurate at its capabilities. It just hasn't been trained to do that. So it's important to always run clear after you've completed every task or run it in a sub agent. That beginning, that starter context window is just so important. It is so valuable. A skill is essentially just some specific piece of knowledge that will get activated at some point. And it lives in a file. It's just a YAML file, essentially. Just a simple YAML file. A slash command, the difference between a skill and a slash command is a user is going to directly invoke the slash command. Like you would type // and enforce the invocation of it. A skill, and even a sub-agent in some ways, the agent is going to decide when to call. As a human, you can sort of suggest the main agent to call these things. It might not. It might not call it at all. And that's why that's different than a slash command. Slash command is going to force it, the agent, to do that. And plugin is a new kind of a new thing, although it's really just a packaged marketplace. It is all the things that we just talked about with an easy to install button, push button capability. And we'll run through that as well here today. We'll run through it as well. I'm excited about it. A plugin is nothing special. It does not anything different. It's just installing. It's package management, essentially. That's what it is. It's package management. I like calling it that, package management. All right, the number one prompt, keep it short and direct and verbose. You don't need to have any pleasantries. You can just, do X or Y. Here's some examples. Check out these examples. I needed to fix a bug that's causing issues. Obviously, that's very broad, right? You wouldn't necessarily type that anyway. However, you can see it's very wordy, it's flowery. Hey, I need you. Instead, just say fix null check and then say what it is. Direct and simple. Can you make it faster? Oh no, just add caching, right? Build out the entire checkout workflow for me. It will probably do it. It won't do it in the way that you want to, though. You might want to have it create a cart summary component with items, quantity, and subtotal. For example, right? I was wondering if you could add authentication. Well, it probably will. It might not do JWT auth, though. So you have to be very specific, clear, concise. And look how short that prompt is. Remember when we were all about, let's make a 5-page prompt so that way we submit it and then you can one-shot it. We don't need to do that anymore. You just keep it very short and direct and have it write the code that you would write. So it now is becoming essentially the code writer for us, and we're just telling it what to do. That's it. Keep it short and direct. Simple, simple. And one last thing before we get to our demo is it's not just for code. You can do it for everything else in your day-to-day. Documentation, diagrams, commit messages, pull requests, test data. You can have it test data. You can do database migrations. And you know what? I forgot to add in here presentations. Because this was also written. The code actually wrote my presentation for me. For the most part, I went in and changed a few things around, but this was AI generated. I don't know if you noticed it was AI generated. So that's it. Are we at the end? Yes, there are more slides. So if you're interested in going a little bit deeper, there are a few more things in here. However, let's jump over to a quick little demo. So if you don't have Claude Code installed, just a quick little Google search or GPT search, how to install Claude Code. I also recommend we use Bedrock. One, because going forward, Anthropic said, and they just released this last week, they're going to copy all the data that's sent to them and use it for training, which, obviously is a problem for us because we've got a lot of IP that we don't want to have exposed. And it now, if we use Bedrock, it's in our own system. It's in our own AWS account. We have a dedicated wiki for that, and just search for that on Wiki, on PubNub Confluence, you'll see it. All right, let's see here. So I've got an open window on the right side of the screen with Bedrock. You can tell right here that Bedrock is being used because you can see right here, it says AWS Bedrock. You can also pick the region. So I chose US Host 2 because I'm living right next to it. So that means it's going to be really fast for me. There are other regions that are available wherever you're living. Make sure to pick the region where you live so that way you get good, fast experience. All right. So let's install some plugins. So all you do is say /plugin, and then you can see which plugins are installed. I have no plugins. I'm just using a tab here, the tab button. So I'm tabbing back and forth. You can search for, let's do security guidance. We could add that with security. Did I type it right? Yeah, security. Okay. Spacebar. We could also add in our Rust analyzer. So we can add the LSP. For Rust, this is really valuable. I like this for Rust. There's others. There's Golang. There's JVM languages, Ruby, Python, you name it. There's a whole bunch of different options. I like Rust, for example. Okay, and we'll press install. So we installed the plugins, and it says to restart. So we'll restart it. And before we do that, though, really quick, let's also add in the PubNub MCP server. So we've got Claude MCP add PubNub-npx-y at PubNub MCP. We should just be able to paste that in like that. This will also install the MCP. We are trying to get in the Claude marketplace. We're trying to add that so you don't need to worry about manually typing this command in, and then you can just select it from the plugin. So we are working on that right now. We don't currently have it. So let's open this Claude. This is a good pattern. I hope you're going to see a few good patterns here that I really enjoy. So I only have 3 prompts. So this is the end. We're at the end of the presentation, basically. All we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste these guys here. We're going to type those in. And what I'm doing here, as you noticed, very short, very simple, and direct. I have constraints. I'm saying the ports, the IP address. I'm saying, I want it to be on /v1 /random. I'm saying use Axum, which, essentially dictates which libraries are going to be used to write this. And I'm just going to give all my permissions to say, go ahead and build it out. And it should give us a nice set of all the things we need. I'm actually kind of curious to see what it's doing. So let's open up our cargo tunnel. What did it choose? This is great. Look at that. The dependencies, very clean, very simple. Only 3. I'm impressed. And it followed our instructions. It did what we wanted. So now, did it say, let's see what it said. It looks like it's finished, which is great. It says API will be available on 3000, which is the port we wanted, and returns a 64-bit integer. Excellent. Let's see if it actually works. I'm kind of curious. All right, so we should say cargo run. All right, let's see if curl HTTP 0000 on port 3000 /v1 /random. Hey, there it goes. It even has a negative number. That's a big number. I wasn't expecting that. But you know what? That counts as random, doesn't it? That counts as random. This is great. Now, that was the first prompt. This is the next one. If you don't do this yet, I recommend that you do this. I think this is a really good item right here. Go back and ask it to edit the file that it created and simplify it. So let's take a quick peek at this. Vi src. We'll open up our main RS. Let's make this easy to read. Okay. So it's already pretty simple, right? It looks like we're at 19 lines here, clean and easy. Don't see any code comments or anything like that. But go back, ask sort of like a follow-up prompt. Every time you do the prompt, ask a follow-up prompt just to say, reduce, simplify, and keep it readable. This is a good one. Hey, whoa, look at that. What is it doing over there? I'm kind of curious. Oh, okay. We'll check it out. We'll do a before and after. Let's do a before and after. There we go. 12 lines. 19 to 12 lines. Obviously now it's doing a few things that are not quite as readable, though you can see what's going on. It's very clean and simple. TCP listener, Axum. That's actually a really good demonstration, I think, of simplifying and reducing. If you don't use that strategy, I recommend it. There's one more. Remember when we installed those plugins? Well, let's use one of them. Review security at src/main.rs. And it has tab completion. We're going to press enter, and it's going to give us something probably. Let's see what it gives us. Let's see here. Okay. I do believe it should have one. I baked this in. I planned this out. It should identify at least one vulnerability. What did it get? Okay. It said recommendations, no critical security issues. Okay. Nothing serious. However, it did mention error handling instead of the unwrap. That's a good one, right? You got to have the we don't want to have unwraps in production. You want to handle all possible errors. Perfect. Excellent. There we go.